This video provides a comprehensive overview of our project management approach at Astro Metal Craft. Follow along as we discuss the importance of a properly managed project, why some projects fail, and key strategy Astro uses to ensure project success for our customers. Project management is a value-add activity that needs to be treated as a skill set to be mastered to move organizations forward. This was a big change in thought for me early on in my career. My goal was to eliminate project management as a thing. My thought was, well, that's just a failure of business process if you need to have a project manager babysitting everything. But over time, my viewpoint on that has shifted in the face of overwhelming evidence. When I came to the conclusion that this is something important for the organization, something that we needed to be good at, I wanted to understand what good looks like and how to incorporate the best practices of project management into what we do here. Every business is taking on new projects or initiatives to stay relevant in a changing world. Particular for us, a lot of the manufacturing that we do here is project-based manufacturing. It's really hard to be competitive in the United States on large, high-volume manufacturing. So if we're forced to compete on small batch, unique, one-off stuff, to be a manufacturer in the United States, we also have to be good at the project management aspect of metal fabrication. So what is project management? It's the art and science of coordinating resources to complete tasks that deliver desired outcomes on novel endeavors. Okay, so novelty. What is novelty? Novelty means there's unknowns, and thus we cannot rely on a predefined and rigid process to coordinate the tasks. So going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, my goal to eliminate project management, the reason I was wrong about that was because no processes that we can invent for the business will sufficiently handle all of the novel, unknown situations that we will experience as we try to deliver on these contracts. So what is a project manager? That is the one person who is ultimately responsible for the results of that new endeavor. On budget, on time, without destroying relationships. The value that's created by the project manager is through making the unknowns known and communicating it to all involved. So as we move forward on a project, we discover things along the way. We try to get as many answers as we can before we begin, but there's a discovery process through the life of the project, and new information comes to light, and it affects what people must do to deliver on that. And so the project manager is helping move that process along, making unknowns known and communicating them out. They might not have all the answers, but they'll make sure they find someone who does. So most projects fail to meet the initial objectives. This is just a fact of project-based things. Human beings are not very good at envisioning something new that's never been done before, and we always underestimate what it'll take to do it. Less than 1% of big projects fully succeed in meeting all initial expectations for cost, timeline, and outcomes. Less than 50% come in on budget, only 9% on budget and on time. On average, projects experience budget overruns of 28%. Rail projects, 45% over. Major IT projects, such as ERP implementations, faring the worst, up to 447% overruns in some extreme cases. I'm just going to go through some of the key strategies that we use to try to increase the probability that we find success. So advice number one, begin with the end in mind. So a few fun quotes of wise people who figured this out. One by Yogi Berra: if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. Another way to look at this, a problem well stated is half solved. And then Elon Musk's great insight, make the requirements less dumb. So what are you trying to do with this project? What are your expected outcomes? Knowing this is going to prevent scope creep and time wasted moving towards the wrong goals. For the business planning aspect, when we do projects for the company, a lot of that planning is done through traction. That's what our leadership team uses, a methodology to figure out what the end goals we're trying to work on and the right projects to achieve those goals. In the case of the work we do and what we supply to our customers, a lot of times the customer is defining the scope, but that's something done in concert through that quoting process. We want to have a really good, well-defined scope of what we're supposed to be providing. We really want to understand what it is the customer really truly wants and values before we get going. If we start trying to provide stuff that they don't care about, we're going to waste time and energy and cost to achieve what we think might the quality or what they might like. So we don't want to just guess at what they want. We want to know what they truly value and have a well-written scope before we get going on any project. Next realm of advice, there is no substitute for experience. This is the hardest one to come to grips with. When we're short project managers, it's a really hard problem to solve. You can't just flip a switch and say, you're a project manager now. And it's really hard to hire good project managers into this industry. So we're really trying to, hit a small, think of a Venn diagram. We want people that understand project management well and understand metal fabrication well. And so we kind of have a narrow sliver that we're often looking for of people that fit that bill, because there's just, you have to have seen a lot of shit, essentially. You have to have experienced the problems before. If you're going to have the foresight to prevent problems, the best way is because you've actually already failed before. You've already seen those problems. And ideally, we have project managers failing in small ways on smaller projects, learning those lessons and building up to larger and more complex projects. So there's this concept of phronesis from Greek philosophy. It's just the practical wisdom and sound judgment that only comes through life experience. The project's always going to have a certain amount of novelty, and that's when those standard procedures are going to fail you, and that deep-seated knowledge and experience is what's going to bail you out. You need to be able to hold people accountable even when they don't have authority, and that sometimes that experience that people have, you know when you're talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And having that type of person involved in a project helps smooth things over with customers, helps smooth it over with subcontractors, with everybody that's part of the team of delivering that. So one of the key skills in that crucial conversations we started, that experience in knowing how to work with people, that's another one of those subsets of this that we really want to make sure our project managers understand. So your project is not special. That sounds counterintuitive to what I've been saying. I would say every project has novelty. It's something that's new and different. Well, that is true. There are some things that are unique about it. I think of it like a snowflake. So every snowflake is unique and special or whatever, but really it's all just snow. Okay? So why this is important to understand your project isn't special, we can use the wisdom and experience and the estimates from something similar that we've done before. So when we're trying to forecast or figure out how long something's going to take, bottom-up estimates oftentimes fail. When we try to calculate, this is going to take this much time and this piece of material and then this piece of material, and you try to sum up an estimate from the constituent parts. Oftentimes what we lose in those estimates is what's called fat-tailed risks. So they're unknowns. They're the things that you can't find in the details that kind of get shaken out across different projects. So if we really have never done it before, we haven't done anything similar, yeah, we're going to do some bottom-up estimating. But in general, I think Dustin would attest to this, probably your best, most accurate estimates are based off of projects we've already done. And we know how long it took, and we just get to go take that time. And then we want to say, well, what's different about this one from the previous one? And then maybe we tweak our estimates a bit. That's a really good route to go. And so even if you're not the estimator on the project, if you're project managing somebody else's estimate, you're often going to be coming up with your own timelines or reviewing their estimates. And it's the same kind of idea. What is it this similar to that I've seen before? And those risks that you have to deal with from experience, that's the things that you're thinking about. As I'm managing this new project, what kind of shit went wrong the last time, and how do I prevent that from going wrong this time? So I just alluded to this one, beware the fat-tailed risk. So this is, not to get too carried away with math, we often think of everything as following a normal distribution, but really there's risks that can derail our project way worse than just the averages. So the easiest way I can explain this is we think welding is going to take 20 hours, but if we scratch the panel, now it's not just going to make the time go up by 10%. If we damage the panel and have to start over, it at least doubles the amount of time that we have. So that's like a fat-tailed risk. It's not that if we're wrong that we're going to be off by 10% or 20%. If we do something wrong or if we're off about something, we're going to be off by orders of magnitude worse. When we're managing a project, we have to envision those little things that could go wrong that have disproportionate effects on how long it's going to take. And that's where we focus our prevention methods. We focus it on the extreme cost, the worst case scenario type stuff that can happen if we mess up something. Think slow, act fast. So a lot of how this one applies in our organization is the later in the process we find the problem, the more expensive it's going to be. If you find the issue in the shop and have to fix it because we designed it wrong, that's a lot more expensive than if we catch the problem when we're modeling stuff or we're still in design. So when we're doing something new, we want to spend as much time in that planning process as we need, planning, designing, scrutinizing, that everything is going to be just so, making our quality check plans. Yes, we're spending more time in engineering. Yes, we're spending more time up front, but the amount of time we save on the back end by not having to fix it in the field or the floor is just incredibly helpful. So the other thing is once you're in the production or the installation phase, part of why it gets really expensive is the longer that period goes, the more shit can go wrong. That's the riskiest part of the project. When you start cutting materials, when you start ordering cranes, when you start having to deal with potential weather or delays or those sorts of things, we really want to shorten that's the act fast part. Once we hit production, once we're trying to deliver something, we want to condense that to as short as possible because that reduces the exposure to risks that we have for the project. Next set of advice, break it down. Modularity allows you to learn from each successive module. Try to find the Lego blocks in your project. A little bit of the way that we do that, when we plan a project and we plan the tasks that have to happen, we're breaking down step by step what needs to take place. We set those milestones. We make sure each of those little building blocks keep building on themselves. Another way we can do this, instead of releasing a huge package to the shop of let's say we have to do 80 troughs, don't release 80 troughs. Troughs are already a module. They're already a broken down building block. So we can build 2 troughs or 4 troughs. And then we can take the lessons we learn on the first 4 and apply them to each successive. If we laser cut everything, we laser cut the whole, let's laser cut all 80 troughs. Well, now we figure out at weld that, oh, had we designed this slightly different, we would have cut out half the welding time, but now they're already cut and we can't do that. So when you find your building block, when you find your modules and you can learn from them, it does vastly speed up your project. One really cool example of this is how the Empire State Building was built. That came in under budget and ahead of schedule, and it's because every floor of the Empire State Building was structurally the same as the one beneath it. And so they kept getting better floor by floor. They just have to keep stacking the same Lego on top of each other. And as they went up that building, they just got incredibly fast because everybody knew exactly what to do and how to do it, because you got to benefit from the experience of the previous Lego block you just completed. Manage your buffer. You probably hear me talk about this one a lot. A lot of times when we're planning out a schedule, everybody, because we know people are bad at estimating, we already know this. We already know nobody knows exactly how long, and we usually undershoot. And so people start anticipating that, and everybody starts to add a buffer into their schedule, and these buffers build up. And there's a big problem with that, because when we build a buffer time into every step and we allow more time for that step to occur, the bad student problem happens. And this is truer for some people than others. For me, if I see I have a date way out there to do it, my motivation to start today is really poor. It's like, well, I see my dates out there, so I could start now, but I'd rather do something else, so I'm going to do something else. I'm going to work on something I prefer to work on. Well, that eats the buffer up. That eats up your time budget because the date was stretched out further than it needed to be. So best practice is we manage one buffer or just several, maybe a couple of buffers at important milestones, and we know how much buffer time that is, and we use that as like, that is precious. That is like a currency we want to manage and maintain, because there will be unknowns that come up, and then we do need to spend that buffer. If we waste it all being bad students, giving ourselves more time for each task than we actually need, we'll blow through the buffer, and at the end, this is a common complaint from our welding department. They're the last step in the process, and there's no more buffer left for them by the time it gets to them, and that really sucks. So now all of a sudden, an unknown surprises us at weld. Too bad, we don't have any buffer left. We've consumed it all. Okay, so that's why we want that buffer to be at the end. We need to know what it is, and we need to manage it and preserve it and protect it so that we don't squander it at the beginning. On this one, use the right tools. One of the unique problems we deal with here is our projects interact with each other. So when we try to schedule or plan for our projects, we don't just have to think of all the tasks that need to be completed for that specific project. We have to contemplate all the different interactions it might have going through shared resources of all the different projects. That just creates a scheduling nightmare and a big mess. This is a big reason we went to Odoo. We had explored using Trello, we had explored using Microsoft Project. I really wanted an ERP system where the project management was integrated in with the same software we're doing everything else is. And that's a big driver of why I chose Odoo over some of the other options. And I don't know any other way one could manage the complexity. You can't manage it all in your head. You cannot manage the complexity of multiple projects bunching into the same resources as each other without good tools. So my hope is, I know we're still early on with the tool. I think we're starting to yield some benefits in being able to identify where we're going to have projects hit the same constraint and being able to plan. I know there's a lot of opportunity for improvement, but I think we have the right tools now, and as we learn them and learn how to use them, I think we'll be able to improve on being able to condense our lead times and increase our, the escalation meeting now. I think a good example of it, we're using, is this task late as a signal that we need to escalate and try to get the project back on schedule so we don't just unnecessarily burn buffer time. So, in summary, begin with the end in mind. There is no substitute for experience. Your project is not special. Beware the fat-tailed risks. Break it down. Think slow, act fast. Manage your buffer, use the right tools. If you do those things, the likelihood of your project being successful, on budget, on time, meeting expectations, should go up significantly. Discussion questions. These are just some questions I challenge people to think about. If you've got thoughts today, you're very welcome to share your answer to any of these questions. Otherwise, these are the questions I'm still scratching my head about. Even when you learn theory, figuring out how to apply it or apply it to your specific situation isn't necessarily easy. And so these are some of the sticky questions for me that I'm going to continue to be working on in this domain.